In the NBA, you never have as much time as you think. The stars can disappear very quickly. The promising young core may not be as promising next season after all. An injury can change everything. They lost in the NBA Finals in 2012 with the OKC Thunder. Everyone said back then they would get there again soon. It never happened and the core fell apart. The same with the 2011 Phoenix Suns, who were also promised a golden future. The team they lost to in the finals at that time has since only won a single playoff series. Or take this year's Dallas Mavericks. After their finals run, they had an outstanding offseason. Now they are suddenly in the play-in due to numerous injuries. The Sixers had envisioned their season differently, or the Clippers back then, when they acquired Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on the same day. In the end, it rarely turns out as you imagine, in such an unpredictable and fast-paced business. This brings us back to the topic of today's video, the San Antonio Spurs, who have a 21-year-old prodigy. A top 10 player who is only in his second year in the league. They have time, or they have the player around whom every team would love to rebuild for the next 10 years. Time, right? Difficult. Because you never know what will happen. Maybe Wemby will get injured or request a trade, or a dynasty will emerge somewhere in the West, or generally the hindered candidate has good title chances over the years. Maybe the big free agent for a superstar duo with the big man never comes, you just don't know. What you assume is Wemby 26 is equipped with such a semi-good team, and we're thinking about his future. What I mean is, waiting and being patient is not always the best approach. This certainly also applies to overreacting and acting prematurely, but it always depends on the situation. However, we got a good picture of the situation in San Antonio the night before yesterday in Paris. When the Spurs dazzled from the hall, Wemby shone and delivered an absolute show-up. 30 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 for -3s, the best player of the package on both ends with dominance like I've rarely seen. It is more than obvious that the Frenchman is already a top 10, and at the same time also the best defender in the world. And it won't be long before the player is in the top 3, eventually the best. So, when you're San Antonio, still won the 2023 lottery because you were bad and are now basically in win now mode because you got a century-level wonder talent with gold potential. In my eyes, you go all in, you consider every single year from now on as valuable. You don't look at how can we do it in 5 years, but how can we do it next year already. I would have preferred it last summer, if they had made a big move for an all-NBA level point guard. However, they didn't. Maybe next summer then. But how many all-NBA level point guards are there in the NBA? Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, Darius Garland, Tyrese Maxey, Shai Gilgeous, Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, Jamaron, Tyrese Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox, and Kate Cunningham. Is any one of them a candidate in the near future? If so, De'Aaron Fox, but that probably doesn't fit perfectly, or LaMelo Ball, but he would really have to request a trade, and even then it's unrealistic for the Hornets to let him go. But wait, I missed one, Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors. I'd like to talk in the coming minutes about why a Steph Curry to the San Antonio Spurs trade makes sense for all parties involved, for him, for his current team, and the Spurs, and why this crazy idea might be more realistic than it seems at first glance. Let's start with the Spurs side. They actually have more time, in quotation marks, pressure, than you think. Because the financial flexibility they have now and in the next few years won't be like this forever. You have to consider they have a top 10 player in the NBA, only in the second year of his rookie contract. Wemby is only making $12.7 million. $13.4 million next season and then $16.9. In 3 years, Wemby may be MVP, but gets max true money with all due respect. Patrick Williams will earn more in Chicago in 2026 than Wemby, and that's obviously a huge advantage. After that, he will earn max money and accordingly it will be tight with cap space for a star by his side. Steph earns $59 million next season, $62 million the year after. Next year, the two cost $72 million jointly, and I cost $79. Just to compare, that's as much as the Grizzlies pay Morale and Bane. George on a beat costs and the Sixers then over $100, exactly like Booker and B. Here they should still be in Phoenix or Giannis and Dane with the Bugs. Sure, one could look for a cheaper and younger point guard, but who would that be? All NBA level 3-point guards in their prime are practically non-existent in the modern NBA, and for players like SGA, Morant, Young, or Cunningham you can't trade anyway. Especially since the Spurs, despite their love for their roster, don't have anyone in their own ranks who can become this co-star and same top 20 player. So they have to necessarily bring in reinforcement. I completely understand that at first glance it looks strange to place a nearly 37-year-old point guard next to a 21-year-old center. But context is important here. Curry's greatest strength is still his shooting, and at 38 and 39, he will still be one of the best shooters in the world. His gravity would be the absolute game changer for Wemby. Together, in theory, the best duo that could be formed. I don't need to spend too much time here explaining why the playing fit of the two on the court would be absolutely perfect, and both would also benefit extremely from each other. It would certainly be risky somewhere as well. Curry could get injured or decline drastically, but the Spurs, in my opinion, just have to take a certain risk. Wemby, Cancel, and Simon earn about $57 million together, depending on how things look until then. For a bigger move by then. For a unique player like him, you might have to resort to a unique measure again. Together, they come with one or two good role players who as reagents might give up money to be alongside the two, and then we are only talking about a real contender in my opinion. It's hard to build a contender in the NBA, how the NBA landscape looks in 5 years. Normally, I would still wait at a player's year 2, but in the Wembanyama situation in San Antonio there is just nothing otherwise. If there were another player who is the obvious answer here and fits better in timeline, then bring it on. I thought in the summer that it might possibly be Trae Young, precisely because the Spurs also have so many Hawks picks, but currently, there seems to be no reason for Young to want to part ways with Atlanta. And Trae is younger than Def but also by no means as good as him, even now Curry's stage in his career not. Again, the Warriors, who are not doing well in the season and realize it. They should pull the thing apart and reorganize. Trading the best player in franchise history sounds crazy, especially because Curry has spent his entire career in the Bay Area so far. But in the long term, I believe this is the best move. The Spurs have everything the Warriors could use well, young, promising assets and Wessel, then players who earn so much that you could offset that with the salaries and, of course, above all, endless draft picks. They have 4 future unprotected first-rounders for other teams in the next few years, and they have all their own firsts and seconds from pick swaps, aside from the jams. And then no team stands better in draft picks in the next coming years, and this treasure chest would of course also be super interesting for the Warriors. They have not wanted to go all in for years and make a clear decision. Timeline idea didn't work. After such a season you should finally do it. And in my eyes, the realization shouldn't be that we now trade for a star, but we go into a complete rebuild. If you see Steph Curry this season, you also notice the man no longer has any joy playing there. Good teammates by his side, he is constantly rightfully frustrated and he knows best, no longer getting a title in San Francisco. Why not spend the last years in the league alongside Wembanyama? It basically can't happen. Your chances of winning a ring and climbing all these all-time rankings and best lists are much better. So, it's certainly not particularly likely, but in my eyes it would be a win-win-win trade for all parties involved, which I personally would like to see in the summer. I would also love to see a few of you on our New York Christmas trip in December 2025. There have already been a few registrations, so if you're up for it, secure one of the spots. All info and the website you can find below in the video description and the pinned comment. Thanks for watching. See you next time and take care.